There's a saying that goes, the best things in life are free, and the sea is definitely one of them. It's part of our history, our cuisine, our culture, and contributes to various industries. But apart from that, the sea is also an underwater world that is home to abundant marine life. And one of the most important of these is the coral reef. Reefs are an essential part of the sea's ecosystem, and right here at Carlisle Bay is no exception.
Carlisle Bay has almost everything that Barbados has to offer in terms of the marine environment. So there's a little bit of coral reef, there's a little bit of patch reef in the Bay Area, which is relatively healthy. But in addition to that, you have a whole array of animals that we don't see anywhere else. So we have flying gurnards, which are relatively rare here. We have lots of starfish. We have seahorses. It's one of the few places in Barbados you can come and see seahorses. We have frogfish. I haven't seen them in years, but they used to be here. I'm sure they're still there. And then we have just so much fish. It's one of the few areas in Barbados that you can come and see such a variety and such an abundance of fish. The divers actually sank some wrecks or some ships as artificial reefs in the bay quite a few years ago for recreational purposes, and they have stayed there. They provided a home, they provided food for fish. So when you go around these wrecks, you just see an abundance of fish, and we're talking about reef fish, but they also see a lot of predators. You see lots of jacks, sometimes you see barracudas, big groupers. It's a spectacular area.
Because the bay is such a significant location for marine life, the CZMU is exploring the possibility of making Carlisle Bay a protected area. If this comes to pass, it will benefit both the marine life and those who use the bay.
Anybody who's in the water, fishermen, divers, snorkelers, if you've been in the water for more than 20 years, you will see that there are fewer fish and the fish are smaller. Yeah? I'm not going to put my finger and say it's one thing. We'll say it's a variety of things. It's a variety of poor water quality, unsustainable fishing, anchor damage, and so on, because the reef is a habitat for the fish. So if the reef is degraded, the fish are going to go down. But at the same time, while this is happening, we just cannot eat all the fish that are on the reef, because the fish are very important to the reef. So we have to take a look at fishing pressure. We're not saying don't fish, but we might have to look at maybe you can fish here and not here. And then what will happen is the fish will grow back to their size. They will grow back to a size where they can reproduce. Right now, a lot of us are catching fish that are this small. So you're taking fish away that have not had a chance to reproduce yet. So obviously the numbers are going to go down and down and down and down, and we're seeing it. But if we have safe havens for fish, so that they can reproduce, they can grow big and keep reproducing, what happens is eventually there's not enough space in that area and they spill over the sides. And I mean, we have seen it globally. And a lot of fishermen tend to congregate at the edges of protected areas where there's no fishing because of the spillover of fish coming out. So it's beneficial to limiting fishing. It's beneficial to fishers, and it's beneficial to the coral reefs, which is beneficial to fishers and all of us in the long run.
The idea to have Carlisle Bay as a protected area is not a new one. It dates back to the early 1990s, when the Professional Association of Dive Operators shared its concerns about the deterioration of marine ecosystems in the area. Some work has been done in this regard, including the installation of permanent moorings. However, there is still much to be done.
It's taken a very, very long time, but it's in progress. And I think everyone is on board with wanting to protect this area for so many reasons. For the reef, for the biodiversity, the unique organisms in here, but also look at all the users. Look at all the users in this bay. We have boaters, paddle boarders, we have jet skiers, we have swimmers, divers, snorkelers, we have the party boats, we have the yachts who come and stay, we have restaurants, we have hotels. There are so many users in this bay. Because it's such a unique area. We have turtles. I didn't speak about the turtles in Carlisle Bay. We also have turtles in the bay. And coming off of the Hilton is one of the most important hawksbill nesting sites in the region and perhaps the world. We're not even sure. So amazing area. It's also part of the World Heritage Site. It's part of the buffer zone for the World Heritage Site. So many many different activities are going on in here, and obviously there are going to be conflicts. They have to be. There are many different uses. So what we're trying to do in protecting this area is managing it. It's more a matter of managing it, I would say, managing the uses so that everybody's safe, so that divers don't have to look up for speedboats, so that swimmers can swim without being worried about jet skis, so that jet skis don't have to be looking everywhere for people. So we want to manage the uses of this area, and we also want to protect the biodiversity in this area.
Coral reefs are crucial to marine biodiversity. They protect coastlines from rising sea levels and storm surges, are a habitat for marine life, and their beauty continues to attract locals and tourists alike. Called the rainforests of the sea, coral reefs are home to many plant and animal species. But the reefs face many challenges, from the illegal sale of coral to negative impacts from global warming.
Coral reefs are supremely important for Barbados. So coral reefs are made from coral, which is an amazing little animal. They're just a few millimeters or a few inches in size. They're very gelatinous. They're small. They're like jellyfish, and they build a skeleton around their bodies. And it's a skeleton that we tend to see. They're what we call biogenic structures. They're generated by animals, and they're the largest biogenic structures on this planet. So, you know, they're animal, but they live in association with small plants called zooxanthellae. And these plants use the sunshine and they generate food for the corals, and the corals provide shelter for them. It's a very simple way of doing it, but it's what we call a symbiotic relationship. They rely on each other. So during the day, the corals can just sunbathe and the plants generate food for them. And during the night, that stored up food is what they receive. So it's an amazing ecosystem on its own. But for Barbados, a small island state like Barbados, they're extremely important. Because reefs, coral reefs, are the reason we have reef fish. So potfish, which is so crucial to the Barbadian palate, they're here because we have a coral reef. And I mean, if you look at the sea, you notice it's very clear. It's beautiful, everybody comes here for the water, but it's also very barren. There's not a lot of food in it at all. So in other temperate countries especially, you know, the fish can go along and feed as they go. But here they can't do that. It's like a desert. And then within this desert, you have this amazingly productive ecosystem, which is a coral reef, and it provides food for fish, it provides a haven, it provides shelter, and so many other things. So without our reefs, we would not have reef fish. That's one thing. And they're also finding some links between the reef fish and the pelagic fish that we eat, like flying fish and so on. But that one hasn't been proven yet. Yeah, but they're finding some tenuous links. Apart from that, our sand, most of our sand is ground up coral. Some of it is ground up halimeda, and halimeda is a reef organism. It's macroalgae. So not only do coral reefs, are so important for our fisheries, for our food, but they also are important for our beaches. Our beaches, the sand is comprised of coral, and also the reefs form a barrier, and they lessen the intensity of the waves that are coming in. So without our reefs, we would have erosion on all of our shores, and I think everyone knows that we have quite an issue with erosion right now, and a lot of that is because our reefs are degrading.
Barbados's reefs aren't the only ones suffering. The effects of climate change means the ocean environment is making it more difficult for coral reefs to thrive, and once that happens, the sea creatures that live on the reef, from turtles to lobster to fish, will suffer the same fate.
They've deteriorated quite a lot over the years, mainly from land-based sources of marine pollution. And, you know, it's a huge issue for us, the nutrients, the nitrates and the phosphates. And these are found in fertilizers, these are found in sewage, these are found in grey water. Most things that come off of land have these nutrients in them, or toxins, which will kill organisms outright. But the nutrients encourage macroalgae to grow. And in the ocean, too much of a good thing. Too much macroalgae growing spells a death sentence for reefs. And if you go on our reefs now, especially the fringing reefs, you're going to see a lot of macroalgae. And that macroalgae is being fed by nutrients from land. So I'm not telling people not to spray crops. We need fertilizers and so on. But you could be a little bit more circumspect in how you use them. And, you know, there's some fertilizers that are better than others. So maybe we can look at things like that. Our sewage, we have a South Coast sewage treatment plant to treat our sewage. Hopefully we'll get a West Coast sewage treatment plant, but we all need to look at how we deal with our sewage. And obviously we have to flush the toilet, but maybe things like looking at septic tanks instead of soakaways, things like that will help. So land-based sources of marine pollution are a huge issue. We have some success stories. Back in the day, a lot of boaters used to drop their anchor on the reef, and I haven't mentioned it, but corals take a really, really long time to grow. And you just smash an anchor on it, and that's destroying a couple hundred years of coral in a heartbeat. But we put a series of permanent moorings around on the dive sites in association with the Dive Association. So now, I don't know if you've ever hauled an anchor, but it's really, really heavy. So this is really good because we've established anchors with moorings, and now the boats will just come and tie upon that. So it's great for the divers, and it's great for the marine environment.
A protected area would mean a change in the way the bay is used, with particular areas allotted for specific activities. Loretta Duffy Mayers, project manager for the Caribbean Hotel Energy Efficiency Action Project, explains that the right approach is key to managing the bay and other marine areas.
I don't like the terminology protected area. I do believe that, first of all, it should be considered as a marine managed area. And the reason I say that is because protection always sort of begs a question as to who are you being protected from, or what is it being protected from, when in actual fact, I think what the objective is to actually protect the inhabitants and the habitats existing on the beach and in the seagrass beds and on the reefs and that from stresses that maybe, they probably are land-based, most of them, yes, and in some cases man created. But, we also need to look at how the stakeholders themselves can benefit from managing an area.
Of course, the input of stakeholders, fishermen, divers, hoteliers, and those in related industries and the surrounding community will be crucial. Their input will help determine what changes will occur if the decision is taken to make Carlisle Bay a marine protected area.
Whatever we want to do has to be done with the input and the say-so of the stakeholders. We're not all going to agree, but we're going to all talk, and it's the stakeholders who really know what is best for them. So we, first of all, are going to have to sit down and talk. And we've already had a stakeholder consultation meeting with the users of Carlisle Bay, and it was held at the Barbados Cruising Club. Again, one of the stakeholders, because they're right here on the bay. And we just got together and aired everything out. So we have started that communication, and we will continue that communication. We're going next to the fishers, not just in Carlisle Bay, but in association with the Fisheries Division. We're going to go and talk to fishers and see what we could do, because we don't want to tell people you can't fish and it's affecting their livelihoods. You still have to feed your family, you still have to be able to make an income. All this time that we want to conserve and improve fisheries. So we have to talk to the fishers also and see what can be done. Where would you like to fish? Where would you not like to fish? And then we're going to take all this information and we're going to put it together. So there's some things that we already know. We already know that jet skis and swimmers and divers are not compatible use. And it's already been legislated that there are 2 jet ski corridors in Carlisle Bay. So we're going ahead with international transport, and we have already established one of the corridors. It's in the vicinity of Lobster Alive, our boatyard in that area. And we did it with the jet ski guys. They have an association, so we went out with them. We put in some temporary buoys. We would like to see no fishing around the wrecks. These wrecks have been put there specifically for divers and for recreational diving. And they have to be some areas where, divers can go and not see fishing. And by the same token, they have to be some areas where fishing has priority and not divers, which is why this communication is so important. Because I can't go and say we're putting a fishing priority area here if that's not what the fishers want. So we'll talk to them and see about, having areas specifically for them.
While the needs of those on land are important, the needs of the marine space, especially the reefs, are also critical, as the health of the bay will affect us all in the long run.
Our reefs are suffering. We've seen a decrease in coral abundance of about half in just 10 years. And they're continuing to go down, so it's urgent. We need to do something. And with the demise of our reefs, we're going to also see a demise in tourism. Who's going to come here if we only have rocky beaches? That's not part of the charm. That's not part of the charm of Barbados. Our fisheries is going to go down, and that's affecting lives. That's affecting the fishers who derive an income from it, and that's affecting all of us who love potfish and other types of fish. That's going to affect us too. So I would say that our way of life, and it sounds a little melodramatic, but honestly, I think our way of life will deteriorate greatly with the deterioration of coral reefs. I mean, we're already seeing it. We're already seeing it happen. So the tourism, our main source of foreign exchange, is going to suffer. I think we're all going to suffer.
Tourism businesses, and let's call most of them hotels, restaurants, bars and those kind of things, that are on the beaches have long since recognized that when the beach disappears, they no longer have a business. So I think, significant efforts have been made in the past to ensure that there are no negative impacts, or as little negative impact as possible. I mean, along the south coast here and all along, this area and most along the south coast, practically everybody is hooked into the south coast sewage system. So that nowadays, those impacts that we previously had from sewage, going straight into the sea, that's not happening anymore. And so obviously water quality will have significantly improved. Hotels are much more aware nowadays of the things that they can do, such as nobody throws away cooking oil anymore. That's collected. Bottles and glass and plastic bottles are returned. There are people who collect cardboard. There's people who collect, food to give pigs and everything like that. So, they're much more aware nowadays of, what you should and what you shouldn't do. And I think the majority of hotels, while they may not be necessarily green certified, are much more aware of what they can do to make sure that they do not negatively impact on the environment. And I think all, I would say nowadays, are making sure that they do something.
And while going green will continue to be an important step for businesses, there are also certifications which focus on sustainable development of marine spaces and going blue.
Another one of the areas that we were looking at and have been looking at for many years is looking at the blue certification. Many of our hotels are green certified in some form or other, either through Green Globe, there's Green Key, there's Green Leaf. We also have Travel Life, which is the certification from the tour operators. But even if they're not actually certified, they're very green-minded in a lot of cases. And a lot of the hotels are becoming much more aware of things like, not taking up the vegetation off the beach, which was something that everybody used to do years ago, just to make room for beach chairs. They're now recognizing that, when you remove the vegetation off the beach, you are going to impact significantly on that the ability of that beach to stay in place when you get a sea surge, when you get a bad storm, or, in the case of just high sea level rise. I think one of the simplest things that any business on the beach can do, and in particular when they're food businesses and businesses that sell drinks and things like that, is to ensure that the area of the beach in front of your property is kept clean. And it's a very simple matter to, first of all, I think, cut back on the amount of plastic cups and the amount of straws and things and the amount of styrofoam, if possible, that is given out. But secondly, to every morning make a point before you open of going out and actually raking up all of the non-natural things that you find on the beach. Obviously you should try and leave the shells and the pieces of sea fan and the pieces of coral that wash up and everything, because they break down into sand. But we need to make sure that the beaches are kept free of plastic cups and plastic bags, straws and things that the turtles can eat and also can end up on the reef, further damaging it, But they're the kind of things that everybody has to take into consideration, and we have to look at ways to cut back on the amount of those things that we use. We're using cardboard boxes perhaps instead of using styrofoam, and using there are of course plastic-like cups that are available on the market now, but they're actually degradable. So everybody can make their own efforts at actually trying to keep the beaches clean, so that we don't end up with all of this stuff on the beach and on the reef, and that we're not waiting for the annual beach cleanup to come along.
This proactive approach is similar to the one taken by the Environmental Protection Department. This agency focuses on how what we do on land affects the sea, and they try to find ways to reduce any potential negative impact.
We exercise our functions, as I indicated, through our building development control section, where any building development has to have planning permission, not only from the Town and Country Planning Development Office, but from the EPD under the Health Services regulations, particularly the building regulations, and specifically as it relates to the control of the disposal of sewage, the types of sewage treatment that you're required to have, and where you can have certain types of waste disposal. Those types of things we look at as a way to control how waste may negatively impact the groundwater and then by extension the marine water.
The impact that our actions on land can have on our sea should not be underestimated. Something as simple as sediment can cause harm to our coral reefs.
We have found in some studies that in Barbados, the main sources of pollution to the marine environment are from sediment and from pollution related to sewage disposal. Where you would have stormwater drains, you drive around Barbados, most of the drains on our coastal areas, they end up being discharged into the marine environment. So what that means is when we have heavy rainfall, anything that you can find on the streets and so on can make its way into the marine environment. So that includes the litter that someone did not adequately dispose of, construction material that might have ended up in the roads, and all of that is washed into the marine environment. So that can lead to sediment impacting on the coral reef systems, and it can also bring pollutants with it and have those things discharged into the marine environment. From sewage point of view now, every household in Barbados has some type of waste disposal system. And the issue with that is that sewage makes its way through your waste disposal system, and depending on your travel distance from the shoreline, there are possibilities that nutrient levels could still be high going into the marine environment. But every household in Barbados could contribute to that, but as long as you have adequate treatment, the likelihood of that being a negative impact is reduced. Sediment, in terms of coral reef health, sediment can settle on the coral reef, and the coral polyps are living organisms and they need sunlight in order to survive. So when you have, there's like somebody throwing a blanket on top of you, a very heavy blanket, and stopping the polyps from being able to capture the sunlight. So sediment can kill them by smothering. But then what we have a challenge with in Barbados to some extent is the nutrient levels. So same way that fertilizer that you put on your plants on land may have nutrients in them that help the plants to grow. What you find is when the nutrient levels in the marine water are above a certain concentration, you would find algae and other types of plant-like materials, plant-like organisms growing on top of the coral reef. And again, it has a similar smothering effect, and it off-balances the ecosystem in the coral reef ecosystem. So rather than having a healthy coral reef, you have a coral reef impacted by algae, and it changes the entire dynamic. And obviously it can kill the corals.
Managing land-based sources of marine pollution is no easy task. In the year 2000, the EPD created the Marine Pollution Control Section to handle marine-related issues. In addition, the organization conducts public education programs and assists businesses in their efforts to be environmentally accountable. However, creating managed marine spaces such as what is being considered for Carlisle Bay would assist the EPD's efforts to preserve our waters.
I think it is one of the tools that can be used to help protect the marine environment, because if you have your areas designated and you have adequate management of those areas, that's one way that you can seek to control what goes into the marine environment and what is done on the sea, and to help not only with protection of the environment, but also from citizen security point of view, because if you have a number of users in the same space, you often get conflicts and challenges. But if everybody's clear on these are the rules and this is how we are supposed to operate in this space, it can lend to a better managed situation for everybody. I think that Barbadians are much more aware now of the types of things that they do that can impact on the environment in general and the marine environment in particular. And I would like to believe that fisherfolk and tourism industry, because of the heavy reliance that they have on the marine environment, they should be the ones driving environmental stewardship of the marine environment. And I find to some extent that is true, but there's still more that we can do as average citizens. Simple things like when you go to the beach, make sure that what you take with you, you take away. Don't leave your toys and your garbage on the beach. Dispose of, when you apply to have your house developed, follow the regulations. If it is required that you have a certain level of treatment, do that. So those are the types of things that generally is basically that each person should play their part. Basically, it is a matter of oftentimes common sense, and you're not supposed to throw things in the sea. You use your garbage cans, take away your litter or your garbage from the beach, follow the regulations as it relates to sewage disposal, and chemical disposal as well. If you have things to dispose of, make sure you dispose of them in the correct way. And if you're not sure, call the Environmental Protection Department, call the Sanitation Service Authority. Make sure that you have the information that you need to make the right decision. And to remember that protection of the marine environment, protection of the environment of Barbados in general, is not the responsibility of the government and scientists and the tree huggers. Is this responsibility of every citizen, because we all benefit from a healthy environment. We benefit from enjoying going to the beaches and enjoying it with our families. We benefit economically, tourism sector, fisheries, all the people who work in those sectors directly or indirectly. So if we benefit from its health, we also are negatively impacted when it is not healthy. So it's in our best interest, all of us, to do whatever we can to make sure that we are not contributing to the problem, but we are the ones who are key environmental stewards of what we've been blessed with here in Barbados.
The ways in which you can help preserve Carlisle Bay and other marine spaces are many. Whether you're a homeowner, a beachgoer, or a business person, the key is awareness and action. But there is another tastier way that you can contribute too. While Carlisle Bay is more a recreational than fishing site, the presence of lionfish in our waters continues to be a concern as it poses a threat to reef fish. Part of protecting our reefs and marine spaces is protecting it from invasive species like the lionfish, and we can make our contribution one bite at a time.
Currently we find them on all of our reefs around the island, but we seem to be managing to keep the population in check with diver culls and derbies, and everybody's just being aware that they're there. We have some lionfish in Carlisle Bay. Lionfish tend to like structures, so they aggregate around the wrecks in the marine park and in the offshore reefs. But we do have a lot of divers that are continuously in there, so whenever they see one, they cull it and remove it. We do have a lot of fishermen participation on all the coasts, actually, and a good number of them did participate in the derby. I think one of them even took one of the prizes. So they've been actually very good with assisting and helping, but we really need the fish to become more of a food fish for restaurants to be more involved, and that way it'll be more of an incentive for fishermen to go out and catch them. Carlisle Bay is one of our beautiful sites along Barbados, and it's used by numerous stakeholders and local people. I think moving towards more protected areas around the island can only be beneficial because it saves the natural environment for the local people, and it keeps it beautiful for tourists and our economy as well.
While the relationship between land and sea is complex, preserving our marine spaces doesn't have to be. Protecting or managing marine areas is one of the ways we can help ensure the future of our sea and ourselves. However, personal action is still paramount, and simple, thoughtful action will help us to ensure the future of our beautiful seascapes.
The Barbadian psyche is linked to the sea and to reefs. Even if most of us have not gone and looked at the reefs, we've eaten potfish, for sure. We've, picked up things on the beach. So it's very much so linked. And even if, and that is also linked to tourism, because tourists are coming here for our beautiful beaches, and our beautiful beaches are created by coral reef sands, and coral reefs protecting them. So, they're just amazingly beautiful systems in their own right. So I just want every Barbadian to go and have a look. You can go in the submarine, but I'd rather that you came diving or snorkeling with us. And Carlisle Bay is an amazing place to do it because it's relatively shallow. As a people, as a community, we need to understand how important our marine and coastal ecosystems are to us. And I think once we have that, and I think everyone will help us protect them. I think once you understand the importance, you're not going to take your baby's diapers and just toss them on the beach. And it's always amazing to me that I come to the beach, people come to the beach because it's this amazing, spiritual, aesthetically pleasing area that everybody wants to go and feel this vibe, And then you drop your garbage on the beach and walk off. It is completely amazing to me. So I'm going to continue to try to get into everyone's psyche, and I'm not picking any individual. Us as Barbadians, we have to protect what is ours, what is precious to us. So I just want everybody to help.
We welcome your feedback on our programs. You may email your comments to bgisfeedback@barbados.gov.bb. You may also view our website at www.gisbarbados.gov.bb or subscribe to our YouTube channel, the BGIS.